Welcome everybody. So my name is Korchinski. I'm the Executive Director and founder of Unlocking the Gate Service Society, and I'm calling in from the unceded stolen territory of the Quatsi and Katzie First Nations in Maple Ridge, BC. I'll let Sherry introduce herself.
Hi there, I'm Sherry. I'm the team lead for Unlocking the Gates. I'm not quite sure what lands I'm on today because I'm out camping, so I'm gonna have to research that. But normally I'm on the same as what Mo was on, but not today. I'm not sure, so it caught me off guard there on that one. So
Okay, so I'll give you a little background. So Unlocking the Gates is a peer-led organization so everybody who works for me, all have been incarcerated, from me as the executive director and my whole team, as well as some of my board members. We became a nonprofit 3 years ago. We first started off as a research project with the University of British Columbia, where we researched women for the first day they were released. So I got to sit at the bus loop and interview women. And for me, sitting there through winter, snow, rain, sunshine, women had no idea where they were going to go or what they're doing. We only have one provincial prison in BC. So our provincial system is 2 years less a day, and our federal system is 2 years plus a day. So majority of women. So right now we're average. I think we have like maybe 60 women were provincial in our one center. Back then there was probably about 120. So actually our count's going down, then going up here in BC. Probably lots to do with our overdose crisis. And the new rule, no one's getting busted anymore or charged for anything. So I'd sit at the bus loop, and women would sometimes have to go 6-10 hours on a bus ride, and they'd get a bus ticket, all their stuff in a clear plastic bag, and dropped off at a bus loop and said, hey, find your way home. Women are the most vulnerable when they're released. One thing, what was our predator were the cabs that were picking us up from the jail. So they would proposition us. They would, offer dope for sex or money for sex. And we've actually changed that. Cabs aren't allowed to pick up women anymore. So after the 3-year research project, we started Unlocking the Gates, where we would support women from inside, support them with release planning, basically their basic needs: food, clothing, shelter, everything what humans need, but people coming out of prison in BC and Canada don't get. But corrections didn't want it. They didn't think anybody with lived experience. I realized this was 16 years ago. That somebody who was incarcerated couldn't support somebody who was coming out of jail. So we have a court registry where we can go on and find out where, if somebody was in custody, and we'd write thousands of letters. And we did this for 8 years before anybody even took our organization seriously. And so today our phone number is free in all the correctional centers. So the phones are on from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. inside corrections. UTG's phones, we go by UTG, just so you guys know. Our phones are on from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, so that doesn't matter when somebody needs to reach out to us, somebody will always be there. Because in Canada, in BC, our phone calls inside jail are $2.25 a call for somebody to have to make a phone call. And most service providers and everything don't accept jail calls. So we're one of the few organizations what people can call us to help you release planning. So last year alone, we had 8,200 people are released from our provincial prison, and Unlocking the Gates supported 2,500 of those individuals. 4 years ago, we went into start supporting men. Actually, one of our letters kept ending up, it's really hard to tell men and women's names because they don't have sexes on the court registry. So some of our letters started going into the men's prison, and I'm like, nah, men won't want this service. We have nine men's provincial prisons in the province. And I'm telling you, they keep us very busy, the men. I was really surprised how often. So we pick people up of the day they get released. And the biggest benefit of having peers, and I can't speak enough about peers, is you cannot teach somebody what it's like walking through a gate of a prison. Like, you can't teach them. It's a feeling. I've been out almost 20 years now, and my gut still turns thinking about walking out of those gates to the unknown. You have nothing. You have no money, no food, no clothing, no place to go. You're dropped off in a town you're not from. And here, turn your life around. It's really inhumane, and we still do this. Like, like there's no support except for unlocking the gates. But again, we don't have any housing. There's no place for people to get clothes, no shelters. Most of the shelters won't take people. So yeah, it's really heartbreaking, and my team works amazing at trying to find and support people. Um, so that's part of that program. I'm going to pass it off to Sherry. Well, here I'll go a little bit more background. So in 2020, when COVID hit, we mass released everybody out of our prison system. Like, I mean, mass release. No buses, no planes, no shelters. Everything was shut down. Everybody knows the world shut down. And we threw all these people out of the door of corrections and said, figure it out. That's when Unlocking the Gates stepped in, and I phoned every prison and said, talk to my team. All my team said, no, we're still going to work. I phoned every prison and said, hey, we're here. We're here to support people. We do health checks with them. At this time, there was no COVID testing, no vaccine, no nothing. And the staff would come out in full gear. I mean, mask, everything. And then we'd hand them a mask and we'd get in the car. Knock on wood, not one of my staff ever out of all that time even got COVID. But again, nobody had clothing. There was no food. There was no shelters. It was really inhumane. I get, prison wasn't the place, but also putting people into the community with nowhere to go was worse. So everybody got conditions to report to probation, or they got bail to report to your bail supervisor. Well, no one knows it. As an addict myself, I never knew what day it was, what time it was, right? I breached all the time. And from our 3-year research study, 85% of the women we were interviewing were all incarcerated because they breached a charge. Right? So for me, I'd have a charge what I did 3 years ago, but I was still going in and out of jail because I could never follow through with my reporting order. So Sherry and I were like, everybody's wanted and everybody's got this. And, Sherry works in the community where I live. And so we started the warrant and bail resolution program, and I'll pass it to Sherry to explain that program.
Okay. I was there through the COVID times. I was there long before the COVID times. I actually had recovery houses, and I was having Mo drop girls off to my recovery houses at the time. And I was picking people up and doing it. And she said, well, and I know and Mo from my addiction times way back. And she was like a mom to me back then. And I knew about this great program that she had started because word had started traveling into the jails when I was in the jails. And when I got out and I started getting clean, I got thrown into recovery houses running them at first. And Mo approached me and said, well, you're getting all these people out of jail anyways. Why don't you just start working for us also? And that's how I started my journey with Unlocking the Gates. And so I was there when they taken over from the taxis and that they were getting busy. I was there when they used to send letters. I was trained as we'd look up the court list and we'd send them in. And I mean, we had to go downtown Vancouver, which is quite a hike for us to get down to where they could actually have this little tiny office space that someone donated to them in the hospital. And I seen Mo put out the letters and get the people, and I've watched this company go from a few people at a bus loop to being hundreds of people daily phoning and wanting to be part of Unlocking the Gates. So I was there through that time. I was there through the COVID times when we would mask up and people would mask and have to sit with us, and they were so willing. And before that, the prison system was not very coherent to working with us. Like, they wouldn't really call us, they'd never give us any information, and it was a horrible feeling going to pick people up to help them when you were calling and trying to get them to give you any information, and they would give you nothing. So I was there to watch Mo build that relationship. And once COVID hit, she'd already been ticking away at it. And once COVID hit, they had no one to drive. They all of a sudden lost half their staff. They didn't have people to take them to remote communities. They had no one to take them to bus stations. And all of a sudden I watched Mo's and their relationship grow and grow and see how much of a benefit this program was. And that's when I really seen how much it took off with the jails and them cooperating and everybody inside calling Mo or Pam in the office to be able to get released. So I was there through the COVID. Mo actually tried to get me to be an outreach worker for a little bit just to keep our hours going because everybody was out. And I was like, this is not for me. And then she came up with a warrant and we came up with a warrant probation court thing. And it really touched home for me because I was one of those people that would never, ever go to probation. Myself and my old probation, I've been out 17 years. My probation officer is still in the industry and he still laughs about it. He always knew my voice, but he never actually knew what I looked like because I would never go. So, and we laugh about it to this day. So it was a good feeling to be able to go in. I knew the court systems from the recovery house. I had been there so many times with court through them. So I knew them really well. And when Mo first had me starting with the warrant probation, nobody would accept me. Here's a peer walking into a welfare office, asking people to be like, hey, I'll help if people have warrants, and nothing, no reaction. Into a PO office, no reaction. Into a police office where I'm like, I'm going to start helping you. I might know where missing girls are, or I'll start helping you get people with warrants before you go out and spend hours trying to find them. And no such help or reaction from any of them. As soon as I gave them my name and they looked it up, I never heard from them ever again. So it was a long time for me to be able to keep going. And Mo kept encouraging me, go back in. And I'd go onto the streets and I'd start signing people up randomly because nobody was giving me referrals. And then I would take them in. So now all of a sudden POs were seeing people show up. And they were being a little bit nicer. People were making it to court. You know, police are not having to chase people for warrants for hours and hours, and they can fight different crimes because I'm taking them right to the courthouse, not taking them to a city cell that they have to go downstairs. They're there for 4 hours. They're yelling at the police. They're sick. They're dope sick. And it's not a pleasant thing for either side. So it just was putting in time. And now I think I have, well, on and off, it's anywhere from 120 to 140 different clients that come to us. I've had people in a community come up and introduce me. So if their friends got in trouble in the prior, they weren't in trouble. But if they ever got in trouble, they had to introduce them to me just so they knew who to get them out of trouble. So I've had people come in that used to always get arrested, never turn themselves in, and being shocked when their lawyer's like, what do you mean they're here to vacate a warrant? It's always been a rotation. They would get a warrant, they would never go, they'd go on a run. By the time they actually got picked up, they had so many charges for mixed court, missed warrants, missed probation, that it was the time they'd do their sentence and get thrown back out. So it was never a relationship that they ever got to build. So now I find when I meet people, they want nothing to do with recovery. They want nothing. They're street driven. That's where it is. Once they start hearing their PO tell them, hey, if you don't do something, they see a PO that cares, that actually gave them a month to report and didn't breach them. They see a judge that tells them that they need to get some help or else they're going to do some jail time. They talk to their lawyer because they're making their lawyer appointments. They're starting to have Crown recognize them because they're regularly in the courts. Like, wow, I've never seen this client before. We just prosecute them when they come through in holding cells. So they're building these relationships where a lot of the time people want to change their life. They know they got to do something. They know they got to get housed. They know they got to connect to doctors. They know that they have to do something or they're going to go spend some time in jail. And everyone knows they don't want to. And now I can say I work with police. Police can regularly pull me over on the side of the road to ask me if I've seen somebody for a warrant, or they can come. Mo has taught them that instead of looking for people with warrants to come to me, and or if they're looking to question someone, because a lot of the time on the street population just need to be questioned, whether they were around for something, they seen something. Well, if you police pull up and throw them in the back of the car on the side of the road, they're not going to talk to them. It's going to be an unpleasant questioning, and they're not going to get anywhere. Well, now they're finding that people come in, the police I will set up a secret meeting. I've met them on the side of the roads with these individuals. I've met them in a PO office. So the PO, we'll take them into a PO. A police officer will come in the back door. Nobody ever knows they ever talk to anybody. And they're building and solving cases from this. So we've got the Maple Ridge RCMP. I think Mo, when I first started, and she started this warrant part, she wasn't on any of the teams too much in Maple Ridge, and she sits on every board, and every one of them go to her to get some answers or get some help within the community. So I see changes with Crown. They actually sit with me and ask what, because a lot of lawyers just want to get people out. So they give them all these conditions and they never can follow them. So now Crown's phoning me up, asking me, do you think this person will do that? No, they're not. You're setting them up to fail. So they try to find different alternatives to be able to get them some punishment, but also be able to help them. I've got Crown that reaches out now. They actually come and phone me for witnesses. Sometimes our street and trench people need to go in and be a witness for something, and they can't make a phone call, or they just can't get in there because they feel like they're ratting, where they've got some support that they'll come in with us. So it seems every community that's in Maple Ridge reaches out for Mo. That's why we've got peer hubs and everything now, because she's got the community supporting her. So that's good for me. That's pretty much our warrant probation. We do warrants, we do probation and court. So I'm usually going to court sometimes 5 people in the morning, 5 people in the afternoon. It's a roundup to get them all there. There's also appearances where I go without them, where the judge will actually, people are ordered to be in court. And if I can't find them, but I seen them yesterday, they'll put court over another week till I get them there. We have an integrated court also in our community now, where it's a whole team of people that sit on a panel to try to help and put a bubble around our most vulnerable population. And that seems to be taking off in the courts also.
And it's, this relationship, because we don't give up on them, and don't get me wrong, I don't have, like Sherry says, they'll stand her up and not go to court, and Sherry will go to court, well, I just seen them yesterday. And, but building that relationship with the most vulnerable, and I know for me, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for a warden inside the provincial prison who really believed in me and fought for me to get 1 month funding so that I could get out on bail to a treatment center. And when I got there, I had no intentions of changing, but I didn't want to let this lady down, right? I didn't want to let this woman down. And we hear it all the time from my staff, somebody believed in me, and that we all need somebody to believe in me. My parents didn't believe in me. The school system didn't believe in me. No one believed in me except for this one person. And that's where peers come in, because I always say we're the biggest thing we are is cheerleaders. Never giving up. They're like, I stood you up 10 times, but you're still here. Yes. And the other thing too is, besides that, once you build those relationships, and then I was telling that earlier, I want to get off the dope, or I want to get off the street. We do housing as well. I do have a small grant for housing, so we house people as well, right? They might be in shit shows, but it's a perfect house for them, right? Yes, it's a dump, but then they stay there and they start getting, into the part of, hey, living life in a house. And it's a lot of hand holding and a lot of phone calls all hours of the night. But eventually change. And the ones with the most successful we've housed are the hardest ones, what people will say can't be housed. And they're our biggest success because we didn't give up on them. And again, this is all a bunch of people who have been in prison, who know what it takes. And don't get me wrong, there is another way of, instead of sending people to prison, by supporting people in the community. Yes, housing would be amazing, supportive housing. But if a bunch of ex-cons, like all my staff at Unlocking the Gates, can come up with this program, which is now province-wide. Me and Sherry 3 hours ago were on phones with Crown, lawyers, Bill, supervisors in a new community where we just started a program over in Victoria, right? Like, probation loves us. They don't have to do, how much money I love to do a cost evaluation of Unlocking the Gates, because how much money we're saving by warrants not being put out, people going to court, people not being incarcerated. It's like, I think it's $385 per night in our provincial prison for somebody. We're saving them all this money, and also saving people's lives, because most of them are addicts. So they go to jail, they get off the dope, they come out, they use, good chance they'll overdose. BC is in a huge overdose crisis. We have drug poisoning here. I know right now in Maple Ridge, I'm in a small community. Like, we have probably a maximum of 100 homeless. Like, it's not a big community. And we've had 39 or no, almost 40 deaths this year alone from overdose crisis. This year in BC is going to be the worst overdose crisis we've had since the overdose crisis started 8 years ago. So I was talking to Stuart, like, be mindful of this fentanyl that's coming over to Australia, because the damage it's doing, not just the lives what's being lost, but the brain damage and the psychosis and what it's doing to the street population is so devastating and so sad to watch. People I've worked with for 10, 15 years are no longer the same people, right? So this is one of our biggest drive. I mean, it wasn't our biggest drive for unlocking the gates, but it is now. How to make sure people are staying alive. People who are incarcerated shouldn't come out of jail and die. And that was something I fought for 19 years ago, before the overdose crisis. People shouldn't come out of jail and die. And now it's so high, the number of people that are coming out of prison. And that's one thing. You look at our count. Last time I was in jail, we had 150 women in our provincial prison. We're lucky if we have 50 today in our provincial prison. Right? So the number isn't going up, the number is going down. And why? Because the majority of them are out here dying. And that's sad, because these people are somebody's mother, daughter, and they shouldn't be dying from this overdose crisis. And we need to get together and, if, a small nonprofit, I'm a grant funded. I don't get funding from anybody. I have to write grants. I'm short $600,000 this year just to run my program, because it's election year in Canada. Of course, no one wants to say we're supporting this population, so all those grants were canceled. But if I have a team of 20, if us people who have been incarcerated with lived experience, have this much drive and can do change smallly, can you imagine what if politicians and people who make those decisions just listen to us? So that's about us in a nutshell. I'm always happy to speak about it. I'm super proud of this organization, from where we started off as a research project to a province-wide organization. Yeah.
Thank you so much to both of you. That's absolutely compelling, and your passion, enthusiasm, and commitment to this is just palpable. And clearly, that's been a big part of why Unlocking the Gates has been so successful. I'm sure there will be questions and comments from people in the group, so I'll invite it over to everybody else who wants to make a comment or ask a question. I think it's going to be a who unmutes the fastest kind of competition. James, you're up.
Hi, I was just going to ask, I think, thanks for that talk, really fascinating, because opioids actually something that really has been in decline in our part of the world for whatever reason. It's been taken over by methamphetamine a lot, but I just wondered what your access to opioid substitution therapies, Suboxone and the like, is like, given the opioid-related mortality that you're describing.
Yes. Actually, we've gone pretty far here. Like, I don't know the name of the one we do. It's a once-a-month shot. What it seems to be amazing and really life-changing for people. Sublocade. It's called Sublocade. It's a shot once a month. It takes the craving away. It takes the urge. Again, it's just a band-aid. Again, if people aren't I always say, if you deal with the trauma, you'll deal with the crime. If you deal with the crime, you'll deal with the addiction. It's just this big circle. I do have Stuart, have you ever seen our documentary? I talk about it quite a bit in my documentaries. Oh, I'll send you the links to them. I'm also a filmmaker. I really believe in, sharing our story to make change. We need to do more about, if our prison systems, and I think every prison system, and I think Stuart agrees with me, they really need to be about health, healing, rehabilitation, instead of punishment, right? You know, you can't punish us any more than we punish ourselves. You know, it's a hard life out here. And the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was being an addict, right? It's the hardest thing I've ever done, right? And we just need healing, someplace safe to do it, somewhere caring, and a community. To me, I look at Canada, and I'm sure I look at a lot of places. Our citizens of Canada should be ashamed of themselves and be embarrassed. They think it's okay for the thousands and thousands of people that live on our streets, and the thousands and thousands of people who are out there using fentanyl when they know every time they pick up this fentanyl, they could die. And this population doesn't care if they pick up and die. That's sad to me. And it's sad that a community and a society think that's okay.
I can answer a little bit of how quick to Suboxone. Years ago, I worked in a methadone clinic and I was a counselor there, and it took forever. It was a process. You came into the system, you had to get blood work. Once you got your blood work, if it was in your blood work and it got sent back, then you could get onto the methadone program. We didn't even have Suboxone when I first did it. And now Suboxone's come out into the community. When they first started Suboxone, you couldn't microdose the two together. So you had to come off the methadone for 3 days to be able to take the Suboxone, which was a nightmare for people. I mean, even being in the clinic, people would be getting sick. They have learned that you can microdose the Suboxone with the methadone now. So people are doing a slow taper on it, but I can walk into a pharmacy. Yesterday, I was at a peer hub that Mo has us running. Somebody came in, needed to get on Suboxone. An iHeart nurse came to me. She told me there was literally a pharmacy around the corner. The pharmacy had a doctor coming in that day and instantly she would be started. So we have huge access to be able to get in. We have huge, Unlocking the Gates has huge connections in the community. If we need a doctor, we can phone and we can normally get them in that day. They will literally do their testing right in the clinic. It'll be positive and they will be on that Suboxone that day. I do try to talk to everybody to get onto the Suboxone, because you go from the Suboxone pill onto the Sublocade shot, which is in your stomach. Because the Sublocade shot is what they're giving in jail. So they give that to you in jail. Most people get out, even if they forget to take their Sublocade shot if they did a sentence of 6 to 8 months in jail, they were taking Sublocade. If they get out and forget their dose and they're still being clean, I've had many people have gotten out and 4 months later be like, oh, I forgot, I didn't get my dose, and they're still clean. You build up a tolerance in your body to it, and it becomes used to it. And I see so many people after a year being successful. It's not a taper down on a pill, because it becomes a process of putting that pill in your mouth every day. And it's not like that. You completely forget about it. So I'm hoping, I don't know where you guys are with the Sublocade, but that is the route to go.
Yeah. It's not a Band-Aid, right? It's actually more of a solution. So,
yeah. I wonder if some folks on here might want to comment on where we are with Sublocade. I see Graham or Amanda, or perhaps others might have some comments.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I'm happy to comment on that. I can only speak for Queensland, which is probably not that dissimilar in terms of BC, in terms of its population, and some of those challenges, obviously, with provision of services for First Nations. Certainly in Queensland, the treatment of choice for opioid agonist treatment is actually a long-acting injectable within prisons, and the reason being is that it's much more efficient to be able to provide it that way. It reduces some of the issues that we actually have with standover within correctional facilities, and we can deliver a lot more services to a lot more people. So to give you an idea, it's around about 90% of the prison population are actually receiving a long-acting injectable dose of opioid agonist treatment. Certainly not unsurprisingly, one of the big challenges that we actually have is probably to do with people's attitude towards OAT. There's still this sort of one of the challenges that we have is very much about this attitude that people believe it's almost rewarding drug use with drugs, and it's a real, and interestingly, it's not just within custodial operations that we have that sort of attitude. There are some health staff that actually see that it's almost like providing this is actually almost a reward, and they almost like to use it as a bit of a punishment. So, but certainly we're using long-acting injectables, and we actually trying to, at least within Queensland, is actually have a target in terms of the number of people that we'd actually expect to actually on opioid agonist treatment as a treatment methodology. The only other thing probably just to add to that is that interestingly, I noticed James talked about, in the community, a lot of use of methamphetamines. We have a similar sort of thing within Queensland. But what we do, we find once people actually move into prison, their drug use pattern tends to change, and it tends to be much more using opioids. And so therefore, the focus for us is not just about treating addiction with OAT, but we're actually trying to treat people at risk of addiction as well. And the prison environment is what we consider to be quite a risky environment.
Yeah. Because I know so 16 years ago, like we had very few people, you couldn't even get on any, methadone or, there wasn't Suboxone back then. And now I think almost everybody who comes in, they actually get put on it. It sounds like your number is high too. For me, it's somebody like, so you're going from one drug to one drug to another drug, right? I really wish that, we would do more healing and more instead of Band-Aids, right? Especially so many of us who went there, and Stuart knows there's a book about it. It was actually called A Healing Lodge, and it was a really different way of running a prison, and so many of us got clean and sober and healthy from that environment. And I'd love to see that more. But Stuart, where are we on with World Health Organization taking over?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long road there, Mo.
Is it? Yeah.
And
right.
That is the injectable that he's talking about, is the Supplicate. Yeah. That's what our gels put on also. It's an injectable into their belly.
Yeah. And I know the community here in Melbourne is just starting to get bigger in the community now, because I know Corrections was doing it. And I know the clinics and the clients are like huge success on it. So good for you guys of doing it, because it's only been about a year here in our prison systems, but it's only few and far between get on it.
And Mo, just following on from that, I wonder if we spoke just before the webinar started about naloxone. Can you just comment on what role you guys have, or what your impression is of access to naloxone for people moving through prisons in BC?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, 16, 17 years ago when Jane Buxton brought it in, it was basically only used for people who were on heroin. So my team, so I was trained like 16 years ago on it, and my team, when we first started, I always laugh at her, like I think everybody carries a kit here. But the problem with our kits here is in 2020, when COVID hit, the biggest thing was you couldn't get breath. And I don't think anybody's picked up the breath part again. Like people just narc on them, hit them up, 5 minutes later, not breathing, hit them up again. So there's no breath given to people here in BC. What's really sad, unless you phone an ambulance, we're not allowed to carry the bags. Our kits only come with the Narcan, not like your guys' kits where they come with the breathing thing in them. So our kits don't. So we have a lot of people, so many of our street population now have brain damage because, again, no oxygen to the brain. What happens? And I know Sherry, and it's really hard on the service providers out here, because I know Sherry remembers her phoning me after she, narconned one of her clients, and she goes, Mo, when he came out of it, he wasn't the same. Like, what did I do? Right? It's so hard on us out here, because when we are narcotic, and because of no oxygen and like we don't know how long a lot of people are being out when you find them, right? And then we're narconing them. And then, so I think I said something about 6 years ago, watch out, it's going to be like The Walking Dead out here. Right? And it is like this out here. We have random attacks, but it's not random for the people that are doing it, because they honestly believe people are saying things, or there's somebody and they can see things. So a lot of schizophrenia. We have brain damaged units in all our correctional centers now. Some of them have 2 or 3, because there's so many people that are coming into corrections with brain damage. So our prison system now have come to be one big mental health unit, right? And we have no mental health services, right? So how we're ever going to get out of this mental health crisis we're in is, I have no idea, right?
And
Are naloxone in here? Are naloxone here? They're everywhere. You can pick up the kits. I have hit people up to 9 times without them responding before an ambulance will come, and then the ambulance takes over. I order a mask. We get like these little blue things for your mouth for breathing. I've ordered a mask off Amazon that fits on my face so I can breathe for them differently. But it's also, we also have the naloxone nasals. So the nasals are only usually given out like for people that are dealing with the First Nations. And that's where you get them for free. It's funny, we can't get them. Like most clinics do not have naloxone. Mo gets some because I think she gets some through First Nations Health Authority. So that's where she gets them from. They're quite expensive. And the difference between the nasals is if we're in a community and I hit somebody 9 times with naloxone and away they go, it's different. Where the nasal is twice as strong. I think it's 2 or 3 times as strong. Mo would know the correct numbers on that. But once you hit them, if they come out from the nasal, you need to stick with them, because what happens is they jump up, they run away, they continue using because they're sick or whatever it is. They'll keep using, and because the naloxone nasals are so strong, they will keep using. And when it wears off again, they end up going down again. So it is a big thing if you're to use the nasals, that you have to make sure that you are going to be able to make sure the person is safe afterwards.
I'm just struck by the challenges that you're facing. And Mo, if I remember the numbers right, you've got like 8,500 people in BC prisons each year. And you said you're supporting about 2,500 of those people each year without any provincial funding.
Yep.
Is there, I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to that, but what would be your ideal world in terms of a funding structure?
That I didn't have to have gray hair every time and fighting to figure out. I mean, I have 20 staff. It's a lot of pressure as an ED, and not just the staff. It's like, the hundreds and hundreds of people rely on us. Like we're very well known in all the correctional centers. Everybody knows to call Unlocking the Gates. We're always there. We always answer the phone. We have northern community up north where there's no bus services. So people get released. Sometimes they're 8 hours away from their home community. And 90% of them, probably I say 90%, 95% are First Nations, right? They get out and they're like, oh, well, there's a bus in 7 days. Well, this community gets to -60 in the winter and no shelters. Oh, but just stay on the street. And well, then they reoffend, and then they actually end up only being released back to that town. Right? Huge problem. Thousands and thousands. I mean, sometimes to take somebody 8 hours away costs my organization $3,000 to get somebody. So it's expensive, but we're getting people back to their home community. And we don't see a high recidivism rate because they want to go back to their home community. So it's every penny's worth it. But I think we could be bigger and better. Like, I mean, we have so many communities reaching out to us who want the probation and warrant resolution program, because it's pretty well through lawyers and Crown and everybody about it. It is very cost efficient, way better time use to their time than just keep arresting people in these communities. Like I even have Alberta now want me to move it to Alberta, the next province over. So it needs to go wide, but
I can say it'd be nice if she gets that funding, because she's a research person to keep her funding going, and we have about 1 million spreadsheets she makes us fill out just so that she can keep her numbers for grants. So I would be happy as a staff member if she got some regular funding, and I might lose one of my spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Nah, research is great, isn't it, Stuart? You need research, right?
Music to my ears, Mo. Yeah, but
it is. I'm a research geek.
Yeah.
We also, actually, I'll let you know, we also do one more program I forgot to mention. So we also do, it's called TLC. It's called Test Link Call. So we actually have cell phones we give to people that are tested positive for HIV or hepatitis C or any airborne disease. So we do fingerprint testing. They come up positive. We give them a cell phone, and then we connect them, and then we make sure that they get on the medication and finish their treatment. Last year, we were 82% success rate with people who actually we connected with what had hepatitis C, what actually got the medication and got cured.
That's amazing.
Yeah, amazing numbers, right?
Yeah, I'm just amazed at how much you're achieving without, I mean, the work
No
that
funding?
you're doing, Mo, to write grants to fund this organization. It's intimidating.
Yes, James.
Why is the funding environment so difficult? It might be hard to succinctly answer that, but it seems strange.
It is. I mean, I have, I'll write a grant and it's 20,000, or I write a grant and it's 50 grand, right? I do have 200. I get $200,000 from First Nations Health Authority, but again, about 56% of my clients are First Nations. So I think they just sort of like keeping their foot in the door, but they don't usually fund programs, and they've funded us for 12 years now. But like the health authorities don't fund us. We've tried Law Foundation. I don't know why I just found out today they turned me down on another grant. Well, you think Law Foundation, we'd fit perfectly with what we're doing. So, yeah.
I think she's just that person in between everything that they give funding for. So she's got such a unique program that she's the only one that does it. Even I can tell you, even when she went through Safe BC, they had no idea how to dictate her, because it's a whole new different environment that she's working with. So I think Mo is just in between every grant, that there's not strictly a grant for her. I think that's where it is. She's so unique in a way and being the only organization that's like this, it makes it really hard to be able to apply for the grants.
So it sounds like you're person-centered and not system-centered and siloed. And
we're 100% person-centered. Yeah.
Yeah. I see there's Amanda and then Cameron have their hands up as well.
Yeah.
Hi, Mo and Sherry. My name's Amanda, and I work in our Justice Health for Victoria, and my area is Aboriginal health. And I wanted to ask you, look, your presentation is incredible, and I have so much admiration for what you do. In Victoria, I see a lot of Aboriginal women leave prison, and the challenge is even with some of the basic things in place, for example, housing and supported housing. What can often happen is that breakdown comes because of loneliness. And once the formal supports are removed, sometimes things just fall apart for the women, and I'm sure for the men. I'm just thinking about some examples where I've seen, that loneliness kick in, and they've had a community inside. And so they've got all that kind of, that community. And I've also heard this from the men. I was up at Durrangal, which is a low security men's prison not long ago, and I was talking to one of the Aboriginal men, and he was saying to me, I'm coming up for Prof. I don't get it. I don't mind, because I really love it here. I'm with my brothers. I've got, a great job, et cetera, et cetera. And it just kind of broke my heart and made me think, oh gosh, this is, the incentives here are not working, and we've got to think about that. So that's my first comment. I just want to ask you how do you kind of think about that loneliness piece and the community piece, not just in the immediate term, but longer term? And then my second question is about, what do you see when it comes to, especially for women, but child protection and the involvement of the women that you work with and support, and how to navigate and getting back their kids, because that's one of the things a lot of our women are really trying to work through. And so they're not prioritizing their health, they're not prioritizing a lot of things when they're inside, because they're just focused on getting their kids back. So do you have any reflections on either of those two pieces?
Yeah, I'll talk about this second one, because I'm mother and babies and children is my glitch. I've been fighting it for years. In BC, we actually took BC corrections to court, because we used to have a mother baby program where women would have babies inside jail, get to keep their babies. And there was a whole program, nurses. It was an amazing program. We had 10 babies come back to the correctional center. and not one of the 10 babies ended up in child welfare, and not one of those, I know, and 9 of the women never reoffended. And the one baby mother who did, the father took custody. Where else are you going to find success rate? You know, once we took it to court, Supreme Court said, no, it's the baby's right to be with their mother, breastfeeding, bonding and everything. It's only on paper in BC. Like we do not have a mother baby program. We do have lots of lawyers. I have an amazing team of lawyers what are on standby, but it is one of the biggest challenges is you come out, jump through all the hoops, do all the mother baby programs, you stay clean, you fight, you just give up and you go back. Right? It's devastating, you know, and the reason why women got turned down why they're turning women down inside corrections, because they say, well, 3 years ago you did this, or this could happen. I'm a social worker, right? And I'm like, you remove babies because they're in danger. How can they be in danger inside a prison system where there's cameras, right? Like there's no justice to this to me. And you ever find a solution to it? Because I think it's the most devastating thing, you know, no hope, right? You get out, you think you got, if you do this, this, and this, and then you lose hope. And I think we all need hope. Yeah. Right. That's why my 2 books, we're actually not sure. We're writing a 3rd book called Raising Hope. And it's actually all about this story about women and children and how we got together and the effect of us being in prison. We're just in the process of writing our 3rd book. But I'll let Sherry, I know Sherry was really excited to talk about the community. Me for too, my fondest memories in my whole life are the 10 years I spent incarcerated. Right? My fondest memories. I had my best time, you know, the best friends. Oh, there's one of my books there. It is its own community, and it's sad that we can create this inside jail, but we can't create this community for people coming out. So when we actually got out, we actually started a support group called Women into Healing, was the first of it all, where we would meet and we started little research projects attached to research. People in this lifestyle love research. They love having their voices heard, and it's very empowering. Start small little support groups. Everybody I'm in contact 19 years later have all been incarcerated. I still have those relationships. So they don't need to end. We just need how to build. I have a closed Facebook group as well from the prison where we're all on it. We get to watch people have babies, get married, you know, all through life. So there's another suggestion, start a Facebook group and people start inviting people who have been incarcerated to the Facebook group. You can stay together and support each other through social media as well. Get a few women that are out, start writing, do small newsletters, get a small grant, do newsletters, send them inside the prison about stories of how they're doing out here and get them to women right inside to mail their stories out and do a newsletter. We did that for many years as well, just to build that community on this side. And now we have such a big one now, people coming out all know where to reach. So
thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I can touch a little bit on the child one. I was fighting for my children when I got out. That's all I focused on. And I was lucky. I had a native in jail that said that if I wasn't healthy, I could not be there for my kid. So I really had to heal myself before I could fight for my kid, because I feel your pressure. They fight so hard, they get out and every door is shut down for them and it doesn't happen, and it's a circle. It's a routine. So I was lucky. I had someone tell me if I wasn't healthy, I couldn't get my kids to take the time to make myself healthy before I tried to fight with them. So, I mean, that's where to focus on that. It's such a battle once they get out and the fights for it. I mean, you can touch with the ministry and try to see where it is where you can work through different programs with them. That's what I can suggest on that. For getting into the community, I totally get it. Nobody wants to leave the jail now. I have clients phone me from jail and tell me they're not leaving. Their rent's paid. They have a place to live. They're not going out to the street. They have friends and they have support. And that's the sad part. Until they can fix the housing issues, the support issues, but that's where Unlocking the Gates comes in. So we are peers. We come to them, we meet them, we give them that little bit of hope. Like, I got out to a bus stop. I was not lucky enough to have unlocking the gates. I had no one to greet me. If you can look at getting people, hey, what if I connect you to someone that's been where you are, that's being successful now? And that's where the peers will help your people struggling inside. Nobody wants to leave with the housing crisis. Nobody wants to leave with the fentanyl crisis. Nobody wants to go out on the street and go back to it. They want to stay in jail. They have that security. They have a meal. They have a place to live. They don't want to get thrown out. So I really suggest working with peers, getting them to show them that there's someone to support. Big Brothers is a huge thing out here where people adopt a younger brother that has no family. It's the same thing. Adopt someone in jail, work with them when they get out, be there to support them, to tell them that's where it's been. If they come out to housing and come out to someone that gets it, it makes it way easier for them.
Thank you.
I'll come to Australia to every one of your guys' plays, and we can start a huge unlocking gates there, because I'm telling you, this is life changing.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that you need to have to work for me is you needed to be incarcerated. And I remember when I applied for a job for the 3-year research project at the University of British Columbia, and the biggest thing was, have you been incarcerated? Yes, I have. Okay, you got the job. I'm like, are you serious? Right? And when I ask people, I'll send you my resume. I said, I don't care what's on your resume. Have you been incarcerated? How are you with the street population? Do you have a love for them? Yes. There you go. Right. So I would love to come out and, I think everybody, and it's so, I have so many people who say they couldn't get a job anywhere, and they've been with me for years. Right. And it's the most rewarding job, is being able to give back to this population what is so broken and has no hope. Right? So we need to have hope out here.
Yeah.
And purpose, because we have a purpose inside jail. You have a job, you have friends, you have a community. They walk out that door, they have no hope and no purpose. We got to figure out how to
get you out of here. We're just going to have to do it.
Yeah.
I think, Cameron, you may get the last question for today. You've been sitting there patiently with your hand up too.
Thank you. And yeah, just amazing what you're doing. I just wanted to know about the volunteers and what sort of challenges you had to overcome in order to allow them to act as peers.
Okay, for me, when we first started, it was 2 years clean and 2 years out of the system. But as you go through it, if anybody's a recovering addict like I am, the first year is always about your recovery. The second year, once you get your 1 year cake, the second year is about getting back in the community. So I've now lowered it down to 1 year clean and 1 year crime free. It doesn't mean you have to be, you can still be on probation. I have lifers that work for me. I have people who are like on lifetime parole. Right. If the parole officer says, yes, you can do this. Right. But it is the 1 year. I really believe unhealthy people can't help unhealthy people. Like, you really have to be healthy. And when I did it, so when we did the 3-year research project, we were hiring people right out of jail, and they were all getting loaded. And I'm like, I don't want to do a peer research project where people are doing good and go back to addiction. Like, I hate to see someone go back because they're going into, we go into camps, we go into people who are using. Right. So the 1 year, and they have to be strong in the recovery. So that's our only thing is you have to be 1 year clean, 1 year crime free, and be in prison. Yeah.
And if I can sneak in another question, just wondering, with corrections cooperating a bit more with you now, whether you're able to plan, come up with a plan for someone as they're released, or is it literally starting from scratch after they're released?
No, we actually we get referrals from, corrections, healthcare, self-referrals. We work very closely with them, to make sure their timing's good. Like I said, we're busy. Sometimes my staff are going back 3 or 4 times to different jails. Right. So we really believe we get a lot of judges who, and what's surprising, they're bail ordered to unlocking the gates, so they can't get released until we pick them up. What works out great, because of course, corrections at 8:30, you have to get kicked out, right? So this way, if we can't be there till 12, they're not just kicking them out with nowhere to go. So we have a great relationship. Like I said, when COVID hit, we were the only ones who were out here. And, you know, I went back and got a bachelor's degree so I could have letters behind my name so they would actually take me seriously. Because here in BC, you know, once you're incarcerated, you're always classified as an ex-con or an ex-mint mate, right? And that doesn't change with correction officers, right? So it took a lot of years of saying, hey, I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. 16 years later, you know, they're like, maybe they have something here. And they rely on us. We pick up about 75% of the women out of our provincial prisons here because it's a safe for them because they're so vulnerable.